Right? After agreeing to meet with North Korea's Kim Jong-un, how should President Trump avoid walking into a trap? We'll get expert insight. Plus, a Florida school shooting survivor joins us to discuss his meeting with the president yesterday and to explain why he is not on the gun control bandwagon. And actor and congressional candidate Antonio Sabato Jr. joins us from California to discuss Hollywood's hypocrisy on the NRA and guns. But we begin with news that will only intensify the battle over illegal immigration. After the president blasted her as a disgrace yesterday, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf is defending her decision to warn illegal immigrants of a recent ICE raid targeting violent criminals. The criminals. The Democrat tried to present her defiance of federal law and potentially obstructing justice as somehow normal, which it most certainly is not.
Throughout this journey with this new administration, we are navigating the complicated power relationship between local, state, and federal governments. And that's part of the beauty of our Constitution. That's part of the beauty of our democratic form of government.
It's not that complicated. But her case for harboring illegal immigrants was further undercut by deadly developments in Denver.
Inside those flames is a 57-year-old man trapped inside the cab of his semi-truck, hit by a suspected drunk driver. Denver police say Ivan Zamaripa Castaneda ran from the crash, leaving the driver to die. Authorities say the 26-year-old is also in the U.S. illegally. U.S. Immigration and Customs agents want to deport him back to Mexico, but the Denver Sheriff Department, in charge of the jail, is refusing to detain him should he post the $25,000 bond, telling Fox News that unless ICE gets a federal criminal warrant, it, quote, will not honor civil detainers as it is considered unconstitutional.
Let's discuss all this with immigration attorney Alan Orr, who's joining us from Washington. Alan, thank you much for coming in this beautiful evening, and you're a very accomplished immigration attorney. When you see these stories, when you hear about this, what's wrong with trying to protect Americans by taking people that are not only here illegally, but they are committing crimes? This is the criminal element. And what I'd love to have in this few minutes that we have together is just talk about the criminal element, the criminals. Not everybody, just the criminals.
Well, I just think the criminals is such a small part of the large group that you're sort of trying to isolate. And even with the case that you sort of spoke about tonight with the DUI, the hit and run sort of case, the fact that he's an immigrant had nothing to do with the actual accident. It's a tragedy, and we understand that. But the fact that he is undocumented really didn't have much to do with that.
But doesn't it have everything to do with it? If he is indeed here illegally and he indeed committed that crime, don't you believe that that crime would have never happened if we had actually locked down the border and he never came across our borders illegally?
That's absolutely preposterous because, as we all know, hit and runs are on the incline in all over the United States. So
but
it has
if that
more to do
person
with
is
alcoholism.
not in the United States, if he's not here in the first place, you're telling me that he still would have committed that crime in Denver if he didn't do it?
That's a fallacy to say that if all people who are undocumented were not here, we would not have hit and runs. So, of course, there would be hit and runs.
I didn't say there wouldn't be any hit and runs. I'm saying that person, if he did do it, wouldn't have killed that other person who died in that truck accident.
That's a possibility of extremities that I really can't say for you.
A possibility? That's a reality for that family, is it not?
Once again, it is an absolute tragedy of what happened to the family in that incident. But a hit and run is nothing specific to immigration itself specifically.
It is if the person that committed it is here illegally.
Right. So we're actually a little bit past that because we want to sort of talk about the detainer and why the courts aren't turning him over, because he has a constitutional issue to actually be charged and why civil detainers don't really work. And so what we're sort of here is listening to is that the court has told you, Colorado is telling you that it is unconstitutional for them to hold them if he makes bond.
It's not. And I'm not buying into that argument, by the way.
It's not. Well, it's a constitutional argument. It's about law and order in this country. So therefore, since we're going to uphold the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment requires that if they want to hold him, they need to give him a criminal detainer, not a civil one. So
wait a second. Even just last week, I think it was Jennings versus Rodriguez in the Ninth Circuit determined that you can detain somebody if they're here illegally. You can detain them.
That's a confusion of the circumstances. It's not an issue of if you can detain them, it's how long you can detain them, which is a due process and constitutional issue.
Okay, let's go back to this case. Let's go back to
this. But the Supreme Court did not say you could hold them indefinitely. What the Supreme Court said was that they didn't agree with the reading that California said, that it would be 6 months and then you would get to be here.
Now, I know you're not the attorney in this case, but based on the facts that we're seeing in the news reports, do you think the Denver sheriff should hold this person and let ICE know that he's there so that they can detain him rather than releasing him out into the streets of Colorado?
Well, I believe the international news and the newspapers, ICE knows that he's there, right? I mean, so that's really not an issue. Does ICE know that he's there? So the issue is really, is ICE coming to get him or not? Are they supposed to station somebody outside the door?
I mean, do you think Denver sheriff has an obligation, duty, when they're asking, the ICE is asking to have him detained? Do you think they should do that or not do that?
Well, the Denver has asked them to give them the criminal reason for why they should detain him, which is his constitutional right. So without giving him that information, they're absolutely correct. They should not detain him.
ICE is saying we have reason to believe we have probable cause.
There are 11 million people that are here undocumented. So the Constitution, if someone is here, it's a civil penalty. It's not a criminal detention. So it's not a matter of having each and every person. So what you're sort of saying is you're going to pick everybody up and put them where?
No, I'm talking about the criminal element. Again, I want to focus 80,000 times under President Obama. There were people that were here illegally, committed another crime, got convicted of those crimes. Rather than deporting them, they released them back out into the United States. Do you think that's a problem?
So what exact crimes are we talking about? I see that's where we can't sort of mix crimes together.
No.
Are we talking about civil penalties? Are we talking about drugs?
It shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter? Really? It shouldn't matter?
Well, it's everything from homicide to rape to DUIs.
I think that's the extreme end of it. It also could be such things as a traffic violation, a speeding ticket, right? So those rare anomalies that you wish to sort of exemplify immigration.
They're not rare anomalies to the people who were killed or maimed or the victims of these crimes. Why should we tolerate even one of them?
Or in any other incident where the person is a U.S. citizen, those things are still anomalies, right?
I'm not talking about, I'm talking about people illegally here that commit crimes. And once they are incarcerated, they're being detained. Why not deport them? What is the case to say it's in the better interest of public safety to release them back out of the United States?
Okay, so that is not exactly what Colorado said. What Colorado said was, please give us the criminal reason why we should detain him, not a civil reason, and we will do so. So what is so hard for the federal government to provide the state with the appropriate information to meet the constitutional burden to hold someone beyond the national time of detaining
I'm telling you that during the Obama administration, there were 80,000 times where criminal aliens were detained, and then they had a choice. America had a choice, and President Obama and his Justice Department decided to, and his Homeland Security Department, release them rather than deport them.
I understand that, but that's history. So we're not talking about the Obama administration. We're in the Trump administration and a year into that.
But Donald Trump is trying to do the right thing, and you've got the mayor of Oakland saying, no, we don't have any you shouldn't help. And the legislature in California is saying,
once again,
you shouldn't
we're talking about the Constitution. We're talking about the Constitution and unfair detaining someone on a civil penalty, right? Why can't the federal government provide the appropriate documents to meet the standard that the state needs to detain the person? That's a very simple thing to do.
And they can detain them. But you know what? You have places like California and sanctuary cities where they choose to just release them rather than cooperating with ICE.
That is not what California decided to do. That is not what the mayor did. The mayor did not go to individual people and say, look, ICE is coming for you. The mayor said, here to the general public, please be aware that this is taking place. Do not be afraid. No need to run and hide. So it was a civil public announcement, just like anything else that ever happens, right?
No, it was a call to go run and hide. It was ICE. Hey, guess what? We're coming after the criminals. And if you got something coming for you, guess what? ICE is coming your way, and they did hide.
There were 121 arrests during this raid.
Yeah, and they missed a couple hundred other ones.
But what crimes had these people actually committed, and what are you doing with them?
We'll give you a list. We'll give you a list. Listen, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate the discussion. Even President Trump's critics are now praising his diplomatic coup with North Korea. But could the U.S. still be walking into a trap? That debate in a moment. President Trump's bold decision to become the first sitting president to meet with a North Korean leader is drawing praise even from his critics.
Does Trump get credit for pushing North Koreans to make concessions such as suspension of testing? The answer, I think, is maybe he does.
Engagement is good. I have been calling for direct talks for more than a year, and so that's a positive development.
President Trump can truly solve this problem, that would be going down as a great president. And there's no way around that. That is the reality here.
Many in the media have also warned the president is potentially walking into a trap. But the administration is assuring everyone they're not letting their guard down.
As the president said, progress is being made, a meeting is being planned. But the world should know this. North Korea should know this. All options are on the table, and we will continue to apply maximum pressure until North Korea abandons its nuclear program once and for all.
President Trump weighed in this evening with a tweet. The deal with North Korea is very much in the making and will be, if completed, a very good one for the world. Time and place to be determined. Let's discuss how the president should proceed with Larry Korb of the Center for American Progress and Fox News foreign policy analyst Kyron Skinner. Thank you both for being here. We really do appreciate it. What are the perils? What are the problems? What are the challenges? And what minefields potentially lay out there? Larry?
Well, I think the real question is, what are your preconditions and what will happen when you make a deal if you do? For example, let's say Kim agrees to give up all of his nuclear weapons. The question is, how are you going to verify that? It takes a couple of years to set up an inspection regime, as we saw in Iran, and even then the president doesn't think it's that good. And North Korea is much more difficult to inspect. What will you do if you don't come to an agreement? Then what next? Because Kim has been legitimized. I mean, this is a ruthless dictator who, does horrible things to his own people, and now you have met with him, something he's been trying with the last 4 presidents who turned him down. So he walks away with something. I think you should have thought of that. And even today, they kept sending different messages. Some preconditions, no preconditions. What's your plan? Normally, when you have heads of state meet, you have negotiators ahead of time work out things.
But you do believe that the president is doing the right thing and that he should actually take this meeting?
Oh, yeah, I think he should. But I think he needs to do it in the right way and lessen the risks.
Now, Kyron, what's your take on this? The president doing the right thing here?
I think so, and I disagree with Larry Korb, the way he's presented it. I don't think the dangers and pitfalls exist as much as many of the detractors are trying to say for this particular reason. At least since 1992, we've had discussions going on with the North Koreans at lower levels in the U.S. government, and they ended up in an inconclusive way. Because we're dealing with an authoritarian regime, really a totalitarian leadership, it's important that the top of the U.S. government be involved in the initial discussions with the North Korean leader. So what looks unconventional, I think, really reflects the reality of the failed policy of more than a couple of decades. And we're going into this, maybe there are different messages coming out of Washington and out of North Korea as a result of this, unusual announcement and an unusual approach. But the fact remains that the U.S. remains committed to degrading North Korea. It's going in with the history behind its back and having learned lessons of all the failures of negotiations in the past.
Larry, why do you think we even got to this position? I mean, it seems that the one thing that has changed is President Trump. He's actually taken a very aggressive stance. He's used unconventional communication, if you will. Do you give him some credence to that, or is there any belief that is actually what drove the North Koreans to the table?
Well, I think there's 2 things. One, he has reached a point where he is ready to go nuclear. Since President Trump's come in, he's had 22 tests, various things. So he is where he wants to be. And the question becomes now, what next? And if he's willing to give this up, even if you can verify it, the question, what is he going to want in return? Is he going to ask us to take our troops out of South Korea, for example? Those are questions that we need to think about before we get in there. And Kyron is right. I mean, we've had negotiations that haven't worked. But even again, you don't want the president to go in and make a mistake, because it's not like a lower level person making a mistake. If, he does it, then it's very hard to undo.
Kyron, does it matter where this happens? I mean, the optics are such a big part of this, but you really want to get to the substance of what's happening. Where should they do this?
I don't think it really matters, but it would be, I think, appropriate and interesting to do it on the Korean Peninsula. I think it would send a major signal to the Asian partners if it happened there. But let me just speak to the point about the president and making mistakes. The president is not going into negotiations with Kim Jong-un. He's going into discussions and talks. And if you go back to the Reagan administration, there was no possibility of getting the first nuclear disarmament agreement of the Cold War had it not been for Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev building a personal relationship and talking, and Reagan talking with other Russian leaders, such as Anatoly Dobrynin during those years. So I think that we've got to also give the president a kind of wide latitude here, because he's just going to talk and begin to lay the groundwork for the negotiations that will follow.
Yeah, but Reagan never did it without George Shultz and Cap Weinberger. Tillerson yesterday said he didn't think we ought to have negotiations. That same day, the president contradicted him. That's what I worry about. What kind of message are we sending? It's not unified.
I think this is a positive step forward. I thank you both for your expertise on this topic. We hope to have you back. And again, thank you for joining us tonight.
Okay. Kyron, nice to see you.
We have an update out of California coming out of our Los Angeles bureau. There's been a hostage situation, as we've been reporting on Fox News, and we have Will Carr, who's in our Los Angeles bureau, to give us an update.
And Jason, we've just learned from our correspondent Adam Housley from two different members of law enforcement that all of the people who were being held hostage are now dead, including the gunman as well. Evidently, according to our Adam Housley, the numbers are a little fluid with this, but it does sound like it's been a tragic ending to a long day there on the ground. We'll take you back. This started around 10 a.m. this morning when a man walked into the largest veterans home in the country armed with a gun. He walked into a dining room. There was a party going on. He let some people leave, but he held a number of hostages. That led to police swarming the area. They shut everything down. There was a SWAT standoff. There was a hostage negotiation. They tried to negotiate. We know that they could not get in touch with the gunman for a long time. And now again, our Adam Housley reporting that the gunman is dead and at least two of the hostages dead as well. They're trying to figure out if indeed there was a third hostage, as we've been reporting throughout the course of the day. Jason.
Will Carr, coming from California, some tragic news. Thanks for your report. We appreciate it. Stay with us, because newly released audio tapes raise new questions about the police response to the Stoneman Douglas school shooting. A student survivor who personally met with the President Trump yesterday, joins us with his reaction next. The deputy who lost his job for not confronting the Florida school shooter apparently did not tell the truth about his response. Deputy Scott Peterson claimed he thought the shots were coming from outside the building. But a radio recording released by the Broward County Sheriff's Department indicates Peterson knew the shots were coming from inside the building.
We don't have any description yet. We just hear shots, but appears to be shots fired. Alex, do not approach the 12 or 1,300 buildings. Stay at least 500 feet away at this point.
The deadly shooting that killed 17 people is leading students from around the country to push for more gun control. But one student from Stoneman Douglas High School is launching his own effort to prevent school shootings. Kyle Kashuv discussed his ideas with President Trump yesterday, and he's joining us this evening. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
What was it like to meet the President and the First Lady?
It was quite amazing. They were so outgoing and welcoming and really responsive.
Did he know the subject? I mean, what did he ask you about?
Of course he knew the subject. We talked about what implementations and my opinions about the subject and what I thought was best to do.
Now, when you see and hear these recordings, I mean, I can't imagine going through this, and I'm sorry, as a young man, that you had to go through this. But when you hear those recordings and you know that there was somebody armed with a gun there at the facility, what runs through your minds when you hear that recording?
Look, it's absolutely terrible that they let the students in the building be sitting ducks while he had an armed weapon, and he could have went inside, and he let the shooter roam free in the halls knowingly. So it's seemingly he waited for everyone to simply just die in the building, only then to enter, and that's really heartbreaking.
What do you want to see happen? What do you think should really happen next?
Well, I think the Stop Prevention for Violence Act is would have prevented this completely. And I'm really proud to say that it's a bipartisan effort that's got 15 Democrats and 15 Republicans in favor of it who signed up.
Now, you've actually been up on Capitol Hill, right? You met with Senator Hatch. Who else did you meet with?
Senator Rubio, Speaker Paul Ryan, and Senator Murphy, as well as Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Oh, you got the A list. Well, that's good. And what did you tell them? I mean, what was give me the quick pitch. What did you tell them we needed to do?
Well, look, I talked to every single one about my concerns and opinions on the Second Amendment and what we had to do to protect it. And I specifically sat down with Chris Murphy, and we discussed what had to be done. Although we disagreed on what we had to do for gun control, we did find a common ground, and I think that was most important, as in we represented that there was a bipartisan effort to make a change, and there are issues that both the left and the right can agree on.
So where's the common ground? Where do you see that there's actual agreement?
I think the HART bill specifically shows.
What does it do? What does it say?
Basically, it hardens students, it hardens schools, it gives the funding necessary for the technological advancements to make sure we're safe. It increases communications between the school and law enforcement. It makes proactive prevention to make sure that we can properly register students who are having mentally ill or having like mental issues that might act out.
And the governor of Florida, Governor Scott, signed a bill today into legislation. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that bill?
There was one thing that stood out to me, and it was a big concern, because right now we have people in the military, age 18, serving and defending our country. However, we don't protect our own citizens who are legal age to vote and have the mental cognitive ability to vote to have the same weaponry. And I think that's really hypocritical.
So you don't believe that there should be two different thresholds as to where you can actually purchase a gun? Do you think the gun that age should be higher, or should it be lower? Should it be 18
I think right now, if a voter is able to vote at age 18, that means we register they have the cognitive ability, the proper cognitive development to do so. And if they have that cognitive ability, then they should be able to also have the same rights as any other adult.
Now, there's also some proposed legislation or some thoughts on legislation that there should be able to go out and get some sort of restraining order on people that can't distinguish right from wrong. You supportive of that or not supportive of that?
Well, I'm really supportive of making sure that people who have mental disorders and not mentally stable cannot acquire weaponry, because at the end of the day, a bad guy, if you're not mentally stable, you shouldn't have a gun.
And you're developing an app to help with this. Do you have a name for it yet?
Yes, sir. It's called the Reach Out app, and what we're doing is we're allowing students from the same school develop emotional connections and solve their emotional issues in school without any federal government funding.
It's great. The state of Utah is doing that as well. And there's an app out there that where students and
86
parents,
lives saved.
86 lives saved with this app in Utah, and I hope they duplicate it around the country. I'm sorry that you and your friends, and you're too young to have to have gone through this, but thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. In a related development, the NRA immediately filed suit today to block a new gun control law just signed by the governor of Florida, Governor Scott.
So after reviewing the entire bill, I had to ask myself, will this bill make a huge investment and dramatically improve school safety in hopes of never seeing another tragedy like this again? Will this bill provide more funding to treat the mentally ill? Will this bill give far more tools to keep guns away from people who should not have them? The answer to all three is yes.
Not everyone thinks the answer is yes. And joining me from Orlando is Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis. Ron and I served in the United States Congress together. We were on the same oversight committee as well as the Judiciary Committee. He is also now running for the governor of Florida. So, Congressman DeSantis, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Jason, good to see you.
So the governor signed a bill. Would you, if you were elected governor, would you have signed that bill?
I think I would have approached it a little bit different. I think certainly the school security, I think is long overdue. The money for mental health, and then being able to identify these individuals who are dangerous so that they're not able to possess weapons. I think all those are good. I think when you start getting into some of the blanket restrictions on people's Second Amendment rights, I think that is constitutionally vulnerable. I think those lawsuits are probably going to succeed. I mean, think about it. You have an enumerated right in the Bill of Rights. There's really no precedent to just do a blanket ban on certain adults. I mean, we wouldn't say that if you're 18 to 20, you don't have a Fourth Amendment right and police could search your house without a warrant. We wouldn't say that they could seize your property without just compensation, and that the Fifth Amendment doesn't apply. So I think that was problematic. I don't think that provision will actually prevent any gun crimes. But here's the thing. And you know more than anybody in dealing on the oversight, we worked together for years. This, between the locals in Broward County and between the federal with the FBI, was the most catastrophic failure of government that I've witnessed since I've been in the Congress or when I served in the military. You guys mentioned the different warnings that were given on the scene. Obviously, they went to the guy's house 23 times. They had ample opportunity to arrest him. They didn't do it. We then got a briefing this week in Washington from the FBI. Not only did they get a great tip in January, not only did they get a tip the previous year, 2017, in Mississippi, the caller in 2018 who took it on the FBI actually connected the two to the Mississippi one. So they knew this guy was dangerous, and they made the decision not even to alert the local authorities. And so we can argue about different laws. The fact is the laws that were on the books were sufficient to prevent this had government done its job.
Now, one of the provisions in there is in Florida, and it's available in other states, for instance, in Utah, there are teachers and school officials who can carry weapons. Are you in favor of that? Do you think that would help?
I would not mandate any teachers to carry or administrators, but what I would do is say a school should not be advertised as a, quote, gun-free zone. If you have, maybe it's just 1 or 2 faculty members who are licensed, who have a concealed carry permit, I don't think they should be prohibited from using that, bringing the firearm in a concealed way on campus. And the reason is, even if no one decides to do it, just the fact that it might be there, I think that gives a potential shooter pause. And if you're beefing up the outside security and you're hardening the schools, then guess what? The schools are no longer such an inviting target. I mean, we've kind of let these things be sitting ducks, and there's this sickness in society with some of these really demented individuals that are attracted to that. I think just saying that a concealed carry permit holder can go to campus and teach or instruct with that, I think that would serve as a deterrent for people to view that as a viable target.
Congressman Ron DeSantis in Orlando, thank you for joining us. Hollywood celebrities are helping fuel a pro-gun control campaign, but they may want to take a look in the mirror instead. New details next. Hollywood is helping to lead the charge to destroy the National Rifle Association while giving big-time money to the pro-gun control campaign. But if they want to take a stand against violence, they may want to look at their own material. A new study by the Conservative Parents Television Council finds a dramatic increase in the portrayals of violence on TV in recent years. According to the study, nearly 61% of 287 broadcast primetime television episodes featured some form of violence during their November sweeps period. 39% of those 287 shows featured gun-related violence. Let's get reaction from actor Antonio Sabato Jr., who is also running for Congress. He joins us now from Calabasas, California. We thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, my friend.
We're putting up on the screen, you can't see it, but we're putting up on the screen this picture of George Clooney. Mr. Clooney has been pretty aggressive about guns and his belief about gun control.
Right.
You think Hollywood's part of the solution here, or is Hollywood part of the problem?
No, they're part of the problem. Listen, these are the same people that actually believed that Hillary Clinton was going to become the president and was going to be a good president. She left our people to die in Benghazi. Let's not forget that. These are the same people that went to the Academy Awards the other day, protected by LAPD, bodyguards wearing pieces, guns all over the place at the Academy Awards. And then they're making movies on a weekly basis with guns that they want to ban. The NRA has done more to protect the American people than Hollywood could ever do. So let's talk the truth here and make sure the American people know what's going on here. And I think they know that because we elected Donald Trump. He's doing an amazing job. And that's why I'm running for office. In November, I'm going to win because we got to bring common sense back into government and into our daily lives. I mean, we can't live with these lies every single day. The media is spilling lies 24 hours a day against our president, against the Republican Party. That's all they do. And this time, they're not going to win because the American people have woken up. We want our America back, and we got to protect our America and our Constitution.
So what do you think is Hollywood's responsibility? Should they, they're entrepreneurs. Should they just profit? The reason they make movies with guns in it is because Americans go to them and they pay money to go see them. So is it their responsibility, or should we just call out their hypocrisy? What's the right answer for Hollywood?
Well, if they want to talk about gun-free zones and always blame it on the NRA, then they are the hypocrites. But listen, right now, why don't they make more movies about positive stuff? What about family values? What about God once in a while? What about, the Ten Commandments? What about good stuff, positive stuff, loving, caring stuff? And I'm not talking about the Disney movies. I'm talking about in general. Why don't we do TV shows that involves God and family and sitting down at the table and things like that? I urge him to do that. We got to come together and talk about the real stuff here. The problems are not the guns. The problems are the people who are pulling the trigger, like what we've seen in Florida. And then we keep voting these people who are sheriffs, are people in government who cannot protect the American people. And this happened in Florida. So right now we have to educate people and tell them the truth.
Do you think the breakdown of the family it seems to be a common denominator with a lot of these kids? They can't distinguish right from wrong. There may be some mental incompetency, may have a breakdown in the family. Does Hollywood believe in any of that?
I don't know. Listen, we have so many issues right now. The opioids epidemic. People are addicted. Kids are addicted to medicated stuff, and that's really bad. I mean, people are not sitting around with their kids anymore and talking about what's going on in your life. Can I get to know you? Do you want to get to know me? It's always about computers and phones and this and that and all these distractions. We had guns in this country for 200 years, and all of a sudden we're having these problems happening every single week. And they always want to blame it on guns. Let's blame it on people. Let's blame it on society. And let's bring love and happiness and family values back into our daily lives.
Well, listen, I thank you. I think there are a lot of kids out there that can't distinguish right from wrong. It's like a puddle of gasoline. And then they sit 15 hours and watch a video game or go watch a violent movie. And it's like throwing a match on that gasoline and kaboom. And
they're left alone. I mean, these kids are left alone. There's no more communication between the teachers and the parents anymore. Parents can now walk into a school and talk about their issues and with the school itself. All these regulations and this and that. So we're not really free anymore. They want to hold us hostage. And, we don't have Bibles in schools anymore. They wanted to take our American anthem away. We don't respect the flag. I'm fighting for what is right, and we gotta fight for the flag, and we gotta fight for this country. We have 26 beautiful amendments. We got to keep them there, and one of them is the Second Amendment.
And Antonio Sabato Jr. from California, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Democrats and the media are promising a blue wave in the upcoming midterms, but they may be headed for more of a belly flop instead. We'll explain next.